In today's video, we are going to go over high intensity interval training workouts. This is actually part 2 in a 2-week series. Last week, we went into what high intensity interval training or HIIT training is and some of the potential benefits for this type of training protocol. So if you haven't watched that video, I'll put a link for that in the video description below. I highly recommend that you stop this video if you don't know what HIIT training is and go back and watch that video prior to coming and watching this video. But in today's video, as promised, we're going to go into a variety of exercises that can be interchanged to create your own custom HIIT training protocol. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara. I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything related to mobility, health, fitness, and mindset in the context of neurologic injury, with the end goal of empowering you with as many tools as possible to take ownership of your rehab and your health, to live an overall more active, more mobile, pain-free, happier, healthier life. And with all that said, as promised, I'm going to give a ton of different variations of exercises that can fit into the HIIT training protocol that we went through last week. Now, I know in last week I didn't really give specific times for the intervals, whether you want to do 4 minutes high intensity, 3 minutes rest, or 1 minute high intensity, 1 minute rest. I prefer, and again, this is just my opinion, you could dive a little bit deeper into the research or the literature and what is the most effective. But the protocol I tend to use or prescribe the most is 1 minute of high intensity, 30 seconds of rest. So 60 seconds on, 30 seconds rest. During that rest time, you can either do an active recovery where you just kind of march in place, or you can do a seated recovery. And I went into the reasons why you would choose one over the other in last week's video. So if you missed that, again, I recommend that you go back and watch that video. So that's the foundation. Again, that's just my opinion as to what I think the time frames could be to keep it the most engaging and still get all the benefits of a HIIT training protocol without being mentally exhausted. So the 4 to 3 seems a little bit long for most people in order to stay engaged. Now, beyond that, so we're going to stick with that 60 seconds on, 30 seconds off. There are a few other factors or things that you would want to consider when you're designing your own HIIT protocol training session. And one, and probably the most important, is that whatever exercise you choose that I'm going to go over today, is that it is safe and it is effective. So you want to pick something that you can do functionally well enough that you could maintain the intensity necessary. So that's number one. You don't want to be challenging your movement centers of your brain as much as we're just trying to get that heart rate up. That being said, if you choose something that's borderline a little bit too challenging for you to do physically, as far as the movement pattern, then you might not be able to get your heart rate up into that high intensity zone. Next criteria I would keep in mind is that you want to choose something that you can maintain that 90% intensity for the allotted time. In this case, it's that full 60 seconds. So the goal isn't to pick the most challenging thing that you can possibly do once or twice, but it's what can you do for 60 seconds 4 or 5 times within a workout. So that would be criteria number 2, is pick a type of activity that has that amount of challenge in it as far as your cardiovascular fitness. Third criteria I would try and be mindful of or keep in mind is that you can really get a 2-for-1 out of this. So I talked last week about those CDC recommendations. You don't just want to work your cardiovascular health, which is the component where you're getting that heart rate change within the workout, but they also recommend resistance training. There is a ton of evidence that suggests that being strong, i.e., having a regular resistance training session built into your week is hugely beneficial when it comes to living an overall more active and healthy life. So you can choose, and we're going to go through this, some activities that you're getting that cardiovascular workout in, but you're also getting a little bit of resistance training, and we're going to go into some examples of that. So just something to keep in mind, if you can add a resistance band, which we're going to do, or you can add a weight, which we're going to do, then maybe choosing a couple of those exercises in this protocol might be beneficial for you. And the next thing that I think is so valuable is to choose things that are fun, almost playful. So if you guys have been around for a while, you know I try and just come up, some videos, I just try and come up with things that are fun, maybe a little quirky, maybe things you haven't done since you were a kid. That there is huge value in play in general as far as overall health. So if you can, maybe pick one or two things where you feel like you're being a little bit silly, but along those same lines, really just having variety. So maybe not doing the same exercise 5 times within a workout, but possibly doing 5 different exercises within that workout, since again, this is really working more of that cardiovascular fitness. So as long as you're getting your intensity up, you can change the exercises around quite a bit within each session. And then the last piece of kind of recommendation or considerations that I think is important is to choose things where you compensate the least. So if you are someone that has hemiparesis, there are plenty of things you can do that where you're not going to compensate as much. Will you completely eliminate compensating? No, I don't think that's realistic. But I do think that to prevent some of that learned non-use that we talked about, that you want to choose things where you are less likely to only use the strong side of your body. And along those lines, stay till the very end of this video because I am going to give some modifications if you are someone who's a strong compensator, meaning that like if you're going to do a cardiovascular activity and you're distracted at all, you are only going to use your strong side. Stay till the end. I'm going to give some different setups that you might want to try that might help you compensate less. And then the last thing that we should go over is the amount of time. So if we're sticking to this 60 seconds on, 30 seconds rest, most of the protocols that have shown some benefit are minimum of 20 to 30 minutes for the entire session. But I hope all of that makes sense. Now we're going to dive into the actual exercises. The structure of the exercises, I'm going to start with exercises that are primarily leg emphasis. And then within that leg emphasis category, I'm going to give several different types of exercises that you can do and then how to scale them. So how to set up the conditions that you're getting your intensity up and you're able to maintain it for that 1 minute. Now, the reason I'm doing a leg emphasis one is because there's a lot of you out there that don't have use of one of your arms. So these leg emphasis exercises would probably be the route or the direction you would want to go if you can't hold on to anything in one arm. And then next, we're going to transition into kind of upper extremity or arm and leg together. If at all possible, I think it's hugely valuable to incorporate some of exercises where you're, if you can, using your arms and your legs. Again, I just think you're getting more bang for your buck and incorporating an upper extremity activity. It might be easier to get your heart rate into those higher zones. And then, as I mentioned, the final piece we're going to do is I'm going to give modifications for those of you that have a stroke and you don't really want to compensate, or you're starting to develop pain in your uninvolved leg. I'm going to give you some modifications that you might be able to try that will help you to compensate less and hopefully decrease any pain that you might be having in your uninvolved leg if you've been compensating for a really long time. So I hope all of that made sense. Now let's go ahead and dive into the exercises. Now, I know this is a lot of information. It's kind of hard to visualize how to set these programs up, and that is why I have created PDFs with specific programs laid out for those of you that actually want to implement some of these programs. Link to get those programs for free are in the description below. In the packet of programs that you'll receive, there will be ones for leg emphasis, circuits, arm and leg emphasis circuits, and specific ones for those of you that are lower level and for those of you that are higher level. So if you want access to the PDF versions of those, link for that to receive those in the description below. In addition to that, you will notice that there are chapters laid out in this video. I have made chapters for every single exercise. So if you get the PDF that has the program laid out with the names of the exercises on it, you can always come back to this video and go to the exact chapter that has the name of that exercise for future. So hopefully that makes it easy for you guys to implement some of these exercises. And now for the part that you have all been waiting for, let's dive into the actual exercises. All right, now one thing I forgot to mention before we dive into all the variations that you can do, I think it's important to point out that if you have access to equipment and you enjoy kind of stationary equipment, I'm one of those unicorns that I really love just doing something in place. People think I'm strange, but I love running on a treadmill. But keep in mind that you could do this on a treadmill where you just go back and forth between running or walking fast and either stopping or dropping the speed down on a treadmill. You can do the same thing on a stationary bike. I will say if you are someone that has hemiplegia or you've had a stroke, one thing I might add to a recumbent bike or a stationary bike is strapping your knees together so that one leg is also involved, your involved leg is also involved in the exercise. You can do an elliptical if you like doing an elliptical. You can do a rowing machine. There's a lot of machines at the gym that you can do. Also, a lot of gyms have a UBE, which is an upper body exerciser bike. You might see it, it looks like it's kind of up on a platform and they look like foot pedals. That might be something else for those of you that maybe have some balance problems that your gym might have that you might be able to try. Also running in the pool, so that might be another option for some of you as far as equipment, if you have access to equipment and a gym. But if you want something low tech that doesn't really require a lot of equipment, we're going to go through several different activities that you can do now. The first one's going to be just a sit to stand. So without your hands, you're just going to stand up and sit down for 60 seconds. Now, for a lot of you, this is going to be a high enough intensity. Just doing this, you're going to get your heart rate up into those zones. Remember what I talked about, that rate of perceived exertion? You're trying to get to like an 18 out of 20. That's how hard you want to feel like you're working when you do this type, whatever you decide that you want to do. And you want to feel like the activity you choose, you can maintain it for 60 seconds, meaning that you don't get so fatigued that you have to stop after 30 seconds. All right, so that's the first variation for those of you that might not have like the best balance, or you definitely need something behind you. Now, if you try that and you're not getting your intensity up, the next thing would be to go to standing. And then same thing, just without sitting in between. And remember that this first group is going to be all leg emphasis for those of you that don't have use of your arms. And you want to do that for 60 seconds. And again, this first group in the leg emphasis are going to be all like kind of squat variations or sit to stand variations. All right, so you would do that for 60 seconds, and then you would do either a standing rest break, or you can just march for that 30-second rest. Now, if you could do that, but you felt like you weren't getting your heart rate up just with those squats, you could add a resistance band, just stand on it. These are pull-up assist bands. I will put a link for these bands in the description below, but this will add a little bit more of a challenge, and so it might be easier to get your heart rate up into that 18 out of 20 zone. And then same thing. Just doing the little squats. You want to be able to go for 60 seconds. So again, this resistance band's just around my neck and then I'm standing on it. Now, if you are someone that compensates and you're really trying to work on not compensating, an easy thing that you can do that just takes a little bit more attention is just try and lean more towards your weaker side, or pay special attention that you're not shifting towards your strong side. And go for 60 seconds. And then you will rest. All right, now we're going to go to marching variations. So the first one, if you don't feel like you have great balance when you're standing, we're just going to do a seated march. Now you might be able to do a standing march, but keep in mind what I said during the intro of this video is that you don't want something where you're so afraid of falling that you just can't get your intensity up. So maybe you can stand, but maybe it's easier for you to get your intensity up sitting. Then I would do the march sitting. Now, if that's too easy, but you still don't want to stand, you could just add some weights. And I will put a link for some ankle weights. And like these ankle weights right here, they're adjustable. You can kind of grade them. You can add or take away weights. These little things can come out. All right, and then you're going to just try and do that march for 60 seconds. And then you're going to rest. Now, if the sitting ones are too easy for you and you want to do a standing march, you could do just a standing march for 60 seconds. You could also do a standing march with those ankle weights on for 60 seconds. Again, remember these are all just leg focused exercises. Or you can add TheraBand and same thing. Just keep your feet a little bit wider so that TheraBand stays on your feet. This adds a little bit more resistance. And march. 60 seconds. And rest for 30. Now we're going to switch to something that's probably just a little bit more glute focused. So if you're someone who's kind of paying attention to different muscle groups that you want to emphasize, this one's probably going to bias towards those glute muscles a little bit more. We're going to do step backs. So almost like a lunge, so you want to keep your weight over that front leg, and we do that by just hinging forward, hip forward just a little bit. Then most of our weight is staying over the front leg. And depending on what you're capable of, you just step back less. So if you feel off balance stepping your foot back that far, then maybe you just do a little step back, but you can vary that. You can also come near a wall. That's not cheating. Anything you need to do to kind of calm your brain down so that you don't fear falling, so that you could really focus on just getting that intensity up. And then if that's okay for you, or that's not too much of a problem, just go all the way down and tap your knee. For 60 seconds. And rest for 30. All right, so now still focused on those glutes, we're going to do step ups. Now this is another one where you really have a lot of room to play with as far as how difficult you make this activity. We're going to do step, step, step. And I would either alternate each one, alternate legs, or you can do 30 seconds one leg, and then 30 seconds the other leg. All right, and then if you feel like you can do it, I like a higher step. I feel like it does get your heart rate up a little bit faster, having to step up a little bit higher, and same thing. Down and back up, down and back up, down and back up. You can do 30 seconds on one leg and then switch legs, 30 seconds on the other leg. All right, and then you can even go higher from there. And again, I think you just get a little bit more of a workout if you challenge yourself as much as you can, meaning go to as high of a step as you can do safely. And again, same thing with the other ones. You can get near a wall. You're not really cheating, but having that added security might make you feel, or might make it easier to get your heart rate up into those higher intensity zones. And then you're gonna rest for 30. All right, and now we're gonna move on to what I call like a jumping jack variation. So obviously we're gonna get to a full jumping jack, but kind of keep that concept in mind. So the first one you're gonna do is just side step. Remember, you wanna choose the one where you can be safe, meaning functionally you have the abilities to do it, and 2, that you're getting that intensity up. So if you can't shift your weight at all, then you probably just wouldn't want to choose the jumping jack exercise at all at this point. I think it's more counterproductive than it is beneficial. And you're going to do that for 60 seconds. And then again, you are going to rest for 30. Now, if that goes okay, you can do kind of lateral step downs. This will make it a little bit more challenging and still kind of sticking with that jumping jack theme. "60 seconds. And rest for 30. And then again, if that was easy for you and you wanted to make it a little bit more challenging, you could add a resistance band around your knees. Or even go down, down, up, up. These would all be considered what I would call like jumping jack variations. They all seem like a similar movement pattern to me and probably working very similar muscles. Now we're going to get to full jumping jacks, but I understand for a lot of people, especially in this community, the problem is that propulsion. Remember, I've done a video on plyometrics, and it really is hard to coordinate all the muscles to get that propulsion that you need for a jumping jack. So before we actually get to a full jumping jack, I kind of call these like slow jumping jacks. If all those other variations were too easy and you wanted kind of like a jumping jack motion, if you add a TheraBand, you can just do slow jumping jacks. I still think for a lot of you, this is going to be sufficient to get that intensity up. And for this one, we're just kind of doing just the leg variation. But now if you feel like you can get that propulsion off of the ground, then you can just go to a regular jumping jack. And again, remember, this is just leg emphasis, but if you have arms, you can go ahead and do a full jumping jack. 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off. And again, remember, you can vary that any way you want. If you have use of both your arms and you want to incorporate your arms, since with a traditional jumping jack, you do use your arms, this is perfectly acceptable. Again, find the intensity that is right for you and something that you could physically perform the movement pattern. All right, still sticking with the leg emphasis. For this one, we're just going to do a squat, kick, squat, kick. So you want to squat as low as you can, but this is just working kind of a little bit of a different muscle, kind of getting those quads involved just a little bit more than just doing like the regular squat. So again, that would be another one you could do for 60 seconds, or butt kicks. If you wanted to get your hamstrings involved and you have the ability to bend your knees. Again, I'm fully aware that a lot of you guys can't bend your knee. But there's a lot of you on here. This is a big audience with varying abilities, varying disease processes going on. So there are some of you that can bend your knee. So butt kicks is an excellent way for one of those high intensity intervals. 60 seconds on, and then rest for 30. All right, now we're gonna move on to exercises that incorporate both the arms and the legs. Again, if you have use of your arms, I highly encourage you to try 1 or 2 exercises where you do incorporate your arms. Again, it's kind of getting double bang for your buck with 1 exercise. So the first one you're gonna do is just punches and kicks. If that's pretty easy for you, you can add some weights. You can punch forward, or you can punch up. Or if you want to challenge your brain a little bit, you can go 2 up, 2 out, 2 up, 2 out, 2 up, 2 out. And you want to do that for 60 seconds. Now, if you wanted to add a few more muscle groups to that, you could do it slightly leaning back. Now you're kind of adding the core a little bit, and you could do forward punches. Leaning back a little bit really forces you to have to use those abs a little bit more. And you could do that for 60 seconds, or same combination. Kick, kick, up, up, kick, kick, up, up, kick, kick, up, up. Now remember what I said about that silliness factor? Anything you do that's kind of outside the box or outside your comfort zone a little bit, hugely valuable for, again, getting that play aspect. So try something that you don't feel totally comfortable doing in public, but you're gonna do it anyway. All right, now we're gonna take that same exercise to standing. Punches, 60 seconds. You can add those arm weights. If this is hard for you to get your heart rate up, same thing, up. Or you can combine it. The goal is that it's something you can do for 60 seconds, keeping that intensity up, and not get so fatigued that you can't make it through the 20 to 30 minutes. All right, with 60 seconds of that, and then again, 30 seconds of rest. Now, this next one is one that probably a lot of you can do even if you only have 1 arm, and those are kettlebell swings, or you have 1 arm that's stronger than the other one, because some of you can use your spasticity to get your hand around something like this, or you could put 1 hand on top of the other. But kettlebell swings are great because they really do get your heart rate pumping. But they also challenge your balance a little bit. So a kettlebell swing is exactly how it sounds. You're just going to swing the kettlebell back and up. Now the key to this is that you don't round your back. You know, it just might be a little bit more beneficial if you kind of try and work on that posture a little bit. So you just want to kind of keep your heart, or feel like your chest, if you had a flashlight coming out of your chest, that it stays somewhat pointed in an upward direction. You want to try and avoid letting that flashlight shine down on the ground as you come back. So if it shines down on the ground, this flashlight, you know, it should be about 10 or 15 feet in front of you. It shouldn't be directly in front of your feet. So just visualize shining that flashlight out in front of you onto a wall. You're just going to swing. So you're bending at those hips, bending those hips and those knees, and you just want to do it for 60 seconds. If you have use of both of your arms, you can do 1 switch, 1 switch, 1 switch, 1 switch, 1 switch, switch, switch. All right, so those are 2 other variations of things that'll just incorporate your arms and your legs and work on your balance a little bit. And then again, you want to follow that with a 30-second rest. All right, and then if you've been around for a while, you know I like anything that's in kind of like what I call a seated bridge. Some people refer to it like as a table, I think. But again, really working the muscles, the triceps. So for some of you that want to emphasize different arm muscle groups, this is what I call like a seated bridge, and then you can march. You want to try that for 60 seconds. You could do a kick and a punch. But again, remember, you want to choose something that you can successfully do that's somewhat easy. The main goal is to get your heart rate up. And then if you wanted to progress that, I think this is a progression. You guys will have to let me know in the comments if this is harder than doing it seated or with your hands on a higher surface. 60 seconds. You can add the punch for 60 seconds. All right, now as promised, I'm going to give you some modifications that you can do if you're someone who wants to avoid compensating. Now, before we move on to the variations that you might want to try if you're someone who you compensate towards your less involved side pretty intensely, I just can't stress it enough or reiterate. You want whatever exercises you choose to be easy. I would say you don't even want the movement pattern itself to be like challenging or something that you have to think too hard about. So pick the exercise that is easy for you to do. Remember, you have to do it for 60 seconds. And if it's hard for you to just do the movement pattern in general, without a shadow of a doubt, you're going to compensate and potentially hurt something. So pick the movement pattern that falls into that easy category. All right, now for those of you that know you compensate pretty strong, if you're doing any squat variation where you want to keep your weight as symmetrical as possible, I've shown this in other videos, but there are some new people around here. I love yoga block in between your legs, strap around the knees. It's not to say that you can't lean more towards your strong side. It's just harder to lean towards your strong side. And then if you wanted to add an additional kind of accountability tool, get in a corner and try and get your feet equal distance from each side of the wall. And your goal is to, if you're going to do a squat, land your butt directly in the corner with each one. If you're hitting one wall, that's just a cue for you that you need to get your hips more even or directly in between your feet. That's one potential that some of you might want to try. The other one that might work for some of you that are a little bit higher level is just take your stronger leg out of the picture. So uninvolved leg is on the block. Now you're just emphasizing your involved leg more. And a lot of you have seen me do that before, so that's not going to be anything new, but that can be incorporated into a HIIT workout. If you're going to do the bike, I said it earlier, but it's worth repeating. I highly recommend that you strap your knees together, or sometimes you can strap your knee to like the center console of a recumbent bike. I also really like an elliptical. For some of you, if you don't have to pick your feet up off the surface, then your spasticity doesn't kick in as intensely. And sometimes once your spasticity kicks in, you're just going to have a tendency to lean more towards the other side. So that would be another option, is just to use an elliptical and just go between going fast or turning the resistance up and then turning the resistance down. It's also a great way to incorporate your arms. So that's another potential option. And then another option is putting something on your weaker side, like the gym ball, and having to press the gym ball into the wall and doing those squats. As soon as that gym ball falls, you know that you've leaned over towards your strong leg. So again, your job is to hold that gym ball. And I understand that some of you don't have this arm, right? So, I mean, you can roll the gym ball up the wall with one arm, all right? And get your body against it. Maybe even, I would say, bring this arm in front and maybe hold it where you can see it. And then your job is just to not let that gym ball, remember, this is your weaker side. Compensating is having a tendency to lean more towards your uninvolved side and do those squats, not letting that gym ball fall. All right, those would just be some variations. Again, for those of you that are compensating, just to help you minimize the compensation. Now, I will say, I do think timing is important as well. So if you're someone that you're 2 years post, you just kind of have to assess kind of what's most important. I would say if you've hit the 2-year mark, your brain has already started that rewiring process. I don't think you're going to make the compensatory strategies worse necessarily. And the value of adding some sort of a cardiovascular workout is so critical to your health that I think that you might have to sacrifice compensating a little bit in order to get that cardiovascular workout in. So I wouldn't be super strict with yourself if you're past that 2-year mark. If you're in that 0 to 1 year mark, I would say your brain is super ripe for rewiring. It's going to latch on to anything and everything you do. So I'd say in that first year and definitely in that first 6 months, I would still work on your cardiovascular fitness, start building that up. But I would say it's more critical that you choose activities where you try not to compensate or where you compensate the least. So that means if you need to do something sitting, do it sitting. If you know when you stand up, you just stand on your strong leg. And then there's that nuanced gray area for those of you that maybe you're 10 years post, but now you're starting to have pain in your uninvolved leg. That you just kind of have to play it by your own, use your own judgment. I would say that in that case, I would probably try and choose things that are either lower impact, for example, using a recumbent bike or even an upright stationary bike or an elliptical, or trying to get your intensity up in a pool. I would say that's one way to decrease creating more situations where you're putting so much load on your uninvolved leg that it's going to potentially cause problems down the road. And then that is it for this video. I know I gave you a ton of exercises in here. If you liked this video and you want to see more videos like this, definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you will get notified every time I upload new videos. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good day. If you liked that video, check out these 2 videos down here. If you want even more support or ideas on how to improve your overall health and movement quality, check out our Gold membership program. As a member of that program, you will get access to over 300 exercises that are not here on YouTube, as well as access to our monthly live Q&A where you can get your specific questions answered. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I will see you here on YouTube in the next video.